Hey guys, welcome back to World of Warships. Today we're taking a look at the buffed Belfast 43. This ship is a bit of a monster now. We do insane damage and have awesome utility. They buffed it here with some really nice damage output buffs, as well as just some conveniences like turret traverse. Over 7,000 damage into that poor Z31 here. And we get to set up with a smoke screen, as well as a potential 9-kilometer radar for this cap zone. This ship is incredibly powerful. I initially wrote it off as a ship that is, well, that Belfast up-tiered and not much else. And I always had that original Belfast as a very strong tier 7 ship, but up-tiering it into tier 8 made it a little bit worse, so I wasn't really all that interested in it. Now with these buffs though, this ship is absolutely incredible. The buffs are a reload buff, so it used to be a 10-second reload on these guns. Very long. Original Belfast is like 7.5 seconds. Now down to 8.5 seconds. So still a little bit longer reload than the tier 7. But crucially, our alpha damage on our HE is just so much higher. That wasn't changed, by the way. That's just a feature of this ship. You can do insane alpha damage with this high explosive. They also buffed the fire chance from 9% up to 11%, giving us a much more consistent fire output on these battleships. The turret traverse was reduced from 25.7 seconds to 22.5 seconds. Just a really nice quality of life change there. And we also get ourselves from 2 radars up to 3 radars now. Those were the changes. Relatively minor on the turret traverse and maybe that radar as well, but this DPM buff is monstrous. This ship is now more HE DPM than a Mines has at tier 8. And yes, Mines has that low HE alpha combined with a fast reload, but still, better than Mines DPM with these short burst smokes, which are some of the most useful in the entire game. I absolutely love short burst smokes, allowing me to always reposition. Whenever a smoke runs out, it allows me to instantly get back into one in a better position. You're not limited to one specific situation for 2 minutes or 1.5 minutes. It's really nice. Although in this case, I wouldn't have minded this smoke lasting a little bit longer with this guys now pushing in on us. We get 3 torpedoes here with the ability to single launch them. They're not super impressive, but it is nice to have that extra torpedo power at closer ranges. Fortunately, he shot at our Kansas, so I'm allowed to slow down and turn away here, or speed up and turn away. The slow down and turn out is just here to dodge his incoming shells here. It's a bit of a problem, this aiming system. If you know how to abuse it, yeah, the aim assist is going to make that Gneisenau miss almost all the time. Obviously, it's a Gneisenau, so RNG is a factor for him. But the aim assist really trolls you when people slow down and turn out or turn in at slow speeds. I don't know. The aim assist really struggles in this game these days, unfortunately. And I don't think Wargaming has any plans to fix it, or even if they know what the problem is. It feels a little bit bad, to be honest with you. But that's besides the point. Belfast 43, really awesome ship to play nowadays. Insane battle impact, as well as damage output. I was really surprised at how much damage I was able to do. We'll talk about IFHE or not later on in this video, because I did try a few different builds, and overall, I really noticed the fire reduction. But we'll save that to the last game for you. This one, though, we do not have IFHE, so we're going to notice a lot of fire damage here. This ship has 30 millimeters of pen on its HE base, so into those down tiers, which we're getting here, we're getting very lucky with the matchmaker, tier 6, tier 7, those battleships often will have 26 millimeters of armor. So IFHE wouldn't even help us there. Into this enemy destroyer, I guess our hydro is actually going to spot him now, as well as our radar. So utility-wise, absolutely incredible. Obviously no heal. So light cruiser gameplay is very difficult without a heal. So this is going to be a bit more of a skill-based ship, I would say. A little harder to play. If you take some damage, you can never recover that in these matches. So you got to be very careful. And that's really difficult to deal with thanks to this turret angles as well. 39 degrees forward and 41 degrees backwards. You got to give so much broadside to use these guns. So ideally, you're using island cover or you're using your smoke screens, which this ship does have plenty of, by the way. as well as having poor shell velocity. Yes, we have good DPM on this HE in particular, but our shell velocity is very, very slow. So you're going to notice that as the ranges increase 13, 14 kilometers, it starts to get close to 10 seconds of lead time there. So hitting targets, especially destroyers, smaller cruisers at those longer ranges will be quite difficult. So that, I guess, is a bit of a downside of this ship. Yes, you get that massive DPM and alpha damage, but you do have the downside of leading at longer ranges being rather difficult. Fire chance, though, going to be very kind to us in this particular game. As for that alpha damage, it is high, 2450, 2450 alpha damage here. Very high for just 152 millimeter guns. Compared to the original Belfast, which is a tier 7 to be fair, has 2100 alpha damage on its HE. And compared to other tier 8s as well, this ship has much, much higher alpha damage on its HE. Cleveland has 2100, the Harbin has 1900, that of course is 130 millimeter gun, so even lower, but Mines has 1700 only. So very high alpha damage. Yes, it's a longer reload. It plays a bit more like a heavy cruiser in that regard. You have to wait for this reload. You're not that DPM fast reload monster. It's a bit more slower, methodical. You're rewarded for better aim, I would say, just because you reload so much slower, or punished for missing your salvos, which I do like as well. And look at these salvos in here on the Renown. You noticed on the Amagi as well as the Massachusetts, not the best alpha damage because we're shattering a lot. But as soon as we fight those lower tier battleships, oh, the damage, man, it's so juicy. So, so good. And we might consider IFHE because of that. But unfortunately, it only gets you to 37 millimeters of pen. I do want to save that, though, for that final game, though, so I'm trying not to talk about that one quite as much. Again, using island cover instead of just spamming these smokes, which we can do, but you really want to get used to using islands like this when you're in these light cruisers. Even if you have smoke, you don't necessarily want to use them all the time. And when playing around islands, it gives you more freedom to maneuver. Here, if I had smoked up, then our smoke is stationary, where if this Renown is kiting around this island, we're not actually able to keep up with them in our smoke screen, of course. So using these islands is important. We do have that improved British acceleration as well. So you notice here, I'm kind of playing around with my acceleration to dodge a lot of the incoming battleship fire. At higher speeds, we also start to drift when we're in our turns, so that can help us avoid a lot of incoming fire as well. But you don't want to get hit. That's the key as well. So I'm playing it a little bit risky here since we have so much HP remaining. But as you get to mid HP, or you're just less confident in these cruisers, definitely use these smokes. Massachusetts is going to be kiting here, and we're going to have a difficult time leading and hitting him, unfortunately. There are times where we're just misaiming, but also it feels like these days the aim assist seems to unlock or thinks the enemy ship is doing something that it's not, and the shells are going to land low, and then he turns in to go more broadside, and then suddenly all those shells that were landing low are just going to start going high. And then we start to aim for his belt armor, honestly, almost even waterline, they're still going to go high. And then he's going to turn away, and then suddenly all the shells are going to start landing short again. It's, yeah, it might be a skill issue, okay? I'll admit that. I had not played with Belfast 43 before these games at all, so I could be misleading for sure. He's also at the very edge of our range, so I can't even lead more even if I wanted to on those last few. But I don't know if you guys have been noticing this, but for me, it feels like throughout the farming of a battleship or even cruisers, for whatever reason, even the salvos partway through, when I finally get the aim down in a good spot, suddenly they just start to miss again. It's really, really strange how this game is working these days. But as there's not much we can do about it, we just have to try and account for it. I will say it mostly pops up when ships are at slower speeds, probably, as well as when they're around islands. So look out for that and maybe keep a little closer eye on your aim in those situations. And I'm saying that to you guys as well as myself, trying to remind myself to do that. Our radar helping take out this enemy destroyer here, as well as there's an enemy sub in front of us. And here's the real problem with this ship. One of the main downsides to the Belfast 43, of course, the lack of a heal. but at tier 8, not all cruisers get heals, so that's not particularly unique. The problem is the lack of airstrike ASWs. Yes, even the tier 7 Belfast gets them, by the way. It's just the Belfast 43 that does not, and that is miserable. I will not turn this video into a rant about carriers and subs, okay? I will just say my one piece here, and that is that it is just unplayable without the airstrike ASWs, especially as a cruiser. But the game design here is just atrocious. Wargaming has done an awful job with carriers and subs, especially with how they get countered and how they selectively get countered by enemy ships. There is not a consistent way to be able to fight off these problem classes, unfortunately. And let's be honest, I don't really trust Wargaming to fix it. So, if you're looking at the Belfast 43, you got to know that going in. This ship will struggle to both of those classes, but especially against subs. There's really just not anything you can do. You got to hope your teammates are going to be helping you out in those situations. Okay, there it is. Piece done. NC here has damage controlled, and we're hoping for some fires here. Lots of hits on target, and indeed we do get ourselves some fires. Back to that amazing DPM. I also wanted to talk a little bit about the fires per minute. Yes, it's a slow reload, but this fire chance buff does buff our fires per minute, which is really nice. It's actually up almost at the level of a mines. Again, I'm going to bring that ship up. 9.6 fires per minute on a mines, where Belfast 43 has 9.3. Very close. Something like a Cleveland has 13.3 fires per minute. So, you know, not quite that level, but still, these buffs are significant. And this ship has a smokescreen as well as a radar. This is a very powerful ship. Lots of utility to be having this comparable level of DPM and fire chance is pretty crazy, I gotta say. Here, avoiding the carrier and this Massachusetts pushing in on us. This is a very scary position to be in. Fortunately, we have some smoke screens to help us get away from the carrier spotting in particular. We can use this little portion of the island to farm over on the Massachusetts. Another fire there, up to 14 fires in this game. Pretty good stuff. Swapping over to the AP now. It is not improved British AP, unfortunately, but it's still very powerful. It is well worth using. You're going to see the damage output here is very high, but it's not improved. So you're not getting those really nice pen angles like we see on the Minotaur and that entire line. You do not have that here. This is just standard 45 to 60 degree ricochet angles. You also don't get those short fuses, which allow you to get those full pens, even on light cruisers or even destroyers. So this ship will be overpenning those lighter armored ships. But it's still worth using. Upper belts of enemy battleships as well as cruisers, well worth using. Look at this damage output here. Absolutely incredible into this Massachusetts here. A lot of battleships have this problem at higher tier. At low tier, they have very small superstructures and a ton of upper belt armor. Upwards of 100, 150 millimeters at times. Whereas at high tier, suddenly it drops and goes down to 32 millimeters of upper belt armor, at least here on this Massachusetts, which means it is free damage for us. Notice the enemy carrier coming in for a blind drop on us. They like to do that these days, so we want to be maneuvering in our smokes, or at least don't just set up in your smoke and then sit there stationary. Pop your smoke, go dark, but then try to accelerate a little bit further. At least that's what I've been doing to try and avoid some of those salvos. Trying to dodge that is difficult at times when you're slowing down, and these ships have such poor deceleration, these British light cruisers. But still, the carriers will like to blind drop you, so just try to avoid it as best you can, I guess. I don't have any better advice, unfortunately. Our friendly Yumahari has a Kraken. We're on 4 kills, notice here. So perhaps a double Kraken game? Yes, indeed. You don't see those very often, do you? Double Kraken to win this game. Belfast 43, absolutely awesome here. 14 fires, by the way. Yes, we were not using IFHE. Next game, though, IFHE, and we're going to be in an up tier. So getting very fortunate with some of the matchmaker here early on in this video. And while playing this ship, I did have a great time, but I also had really, really good matchmaker. Yes, we're up tiered here. We're no longer top tier as a tier 8, but it's still just a tier 9 game. And there's no sub and carrier. I got so lucky with my matchmaker while playing this ship. So I do think it will struggle a little bit more than maybe I'm letting on here when you're up tiered into those tier 10 games. But for now, we'll enjoy the good matchmaker while it's here, right? We have to. We have to enjoy the good times while Wargaming allows them for us. Here with the King George, we're seeing a lot of hits, a lot of damage, but no fires. And that's because we have IFHE. In this game, I don't think I benefited from it at all, really. 30 millimeters of pen is enough to get through anywhere on a King George, as well as the Duke of York over there. The other thing is there's an enemy Ipiranga and Los Andes over on this flank. Those have 51 millimeters of armor all over the place, or 50 or 51, something like that. So while we can full pen their bow and stern perhaps, and a little more of the deck armor, I suppose, on the Ipiranga towards the back, it's still not really worth taking, in my opinion. If the enemy ships, the Ipiranga and the Los Andes, are close enough that we're able to pinpoint their bow or stern and make use of this IFHE, well, they're probably close enough that we can just pinpoint their superstructure, right? And then we would be full penning them anyway, regardless of if we had IFHE or not into their superstructure. So it's very difficult to actually recommend you use IFHE here. There are ships that it will benefit on, like the Amagi in that second game or last game that I showed you. And there certainly are plenty of battleships at higher tiers that have a lot of 32 millimeter upper belts, like that Massachusetts we were just looking at with that AP. But it's still, I don't think, worth taking. I really value that extra fire chance here. And we're still getting some full pens in on superstructures anyway. So it's 4 points, which is a lot of points on your commander, and of situationally poor value, and perhaps even a nerf tier ship in certain matches. Here there's also a Sun Yat-sen on the enemy team, and that one also has a lot of armor, where our IFHE would not be helping us out here. It's a very difficult proposition for me, at least with the Belfast 43 here. As we get into more modern World of Warships, or perhaps I should say closer to the current date as far as release date on these ships, perhaps you've noticed, there's a lot more armor on the more recently released ships, isn't there? Yeah, a little power creep, right? It's inevitable in these live service games, after all, but it is worth mentioning. IFHE is not the skill that it used to be. This game does not have the 32 millimeter armored battleships like it used to back in the day. And there were still some that were able to shatter, but there was a lot more, at least a lot more that you saw in the matchmaker queue that you could full pen with that IFHE build. As well as back in the day, it did not cut your fire chance in half. It was like a 2 or 3%, maybe it was a 5% flat drop. It was additive, not multiplicative, I suppose, is the way to put it. So they nerfed it a few times, IFHE. So I don't find it all that useful in a lot of ships these days. And for a Belfast 43 especially, I don't really like having it. Yes, we do lose out on some of that alpha damage, which I did say was a key benefit, but I really missed the fires in a game like this. We're still going to have great damage out of this match, especially as these Los Andes and Ipiranga are pushing into us. Very scary, right, to deal with these ships if you're within secondary range. But fortunately for us, we have these super fast-acting smokes. And this is the other element of a fast-acting smoke that I love so much. Yes, they allow you to reposition. You can farm for a little bit here on a Los Andes as he's pushing in. He's crossing a gap, crossing a channel, and our smoke is long enough just to allow us to farm, as he's probably going to go down anyway. But even if he got behind that island, our smoke's going to be running out soon anyway. So it's not like we're wasting half of our smoke's uptime here. I really like that. But the other element is, if you're getting pushed by enemy battleships, which in this case, Ipiranga, Los Andes, really do push, and it's very scary to deal with them at these closer ranges. These smokes allow us to constantly be replenishing our smoke and concealment while still kiting away at times. Really, really useful here. I haven't mentioned it at all yet, but our smoke fire detection is actually really, really solid. 5.28 kilometers, so 5.3 kilometer smoke fire. Really, really good stuff here, allowing us to very easily stay in smokes, even at these relatively close ranges, without getting detected and still farm out of them. I really like that. So Iparanga coming around the corner, and we just left our smoke, and it's up yet again. So we're going to try the slow down, turn out tactic, and instantly use our smoke again. And this smoke will give us a couple puffs here. But Iparanga, full charging in at us, still very, very scary. Here, at least we have some time to deal damage. Although we do need spotting. That is a bit of an unfortunate element, of course. When you're in smoke, you're very reliant on your teammates to spot for you, especially if your radar is not up. If you're wondering why I used it there, I was starting to kite away, and I knew I wouldn't be all that close to the enemy destroyer potentially, so wanted to be using it, I suppose, before I got into a more kited, further away position. Didn't see anything, but that's why I used it, I suppose. Closer range now, and we do get to see some of the value of that IFHE. We can full pen his bow, so it's less saturated, a little bit of value there, but still not all that amazing or useful in my opinion. We still want to be hitting that superstructure. It's a larger target. It's still going to be very common that we miss out on some of those hits just by splashing around his bow. Iparanga, of course, also has insane acceleration, so that's another element of making it difficult to actually hit that bow portion. Broadside on, we're going to swap to the AP anyway. Here, taking some damage, but notice we're 8 seconds away from our smoke. Although, we don't gotta wait 8 seconds. We have a clutch Fletcher on our team helping us out. Our smoke was up at this point, so we probably would have survived still, but hey, I'll take it, man. Team play in 2025 as well. Notice I'm on a renamed user account. This isn't my main account, so this is just someone randomly helping out a bro in the game. We love to see that. This isn't the special treatment I may get from being recognized here. So thank you very much, Mr. Fletcher. There's team play. There's still team play. You love to see it in a game like this, where there can be a lot of focus on individual damage performances and a little bit less so on rewards for team play like that. But it still happens from time to time. You love to see it. Now I immediately leave this smoke. I probably could have sat in there and farmed this Duke of York from this smoke, but I wanted to get going because this game is still close and I wanted to get a little bit closer to the caps, or at least go towards where the A cap is. I think once we deal with the Duke of York, the Otago, the Kagero, our teammates probably get into B cap. But depending on where this Los Andes goes, he might just go towards the battle or towards the A cap. I wanted to make sure at least someone was close enough to go get A in the event that this game comes down to the wire and we need to go get some caps. So I wanted to start moving here. Notice here, these salvos into this Duke of York, not helped out by IFHE, but still very, very nice to have these big salvos into these lower tier battleships. Belfast 43 is pretty good, man. Up to 147k in this one. We have very little hope of hitting a maneuvering Otago, so I will jump forward here. Sun Yat-sen is next on the menu, and again, another ship that has a lot of armor, so our IFHE probably not helping us out all that much in this case. There are situations where it is going to help. If you run into anything from the Conqueror line or the Republic line, lots of 32 there. That Amagis will have 32 everywhere. So there are situations where it's going to be very, very good. We still get up to a high caliber in this game, but only 6 fires. And that is a downside, certainly. I think the fire damage would have helped us out quite a lot more in this game, but it is just one example. I could have just as easily ran into a bunch of 32mm battleships and sung the praises of IFHE. So it really is matchmaker dependent. And what really pushes it over the edge for me is just the 4 points. If it was just a toggle, it would be a little bit more up in the air. I probably would end up wanting to take it. But for 4 points, there's a lot of other skills we can get, especially when it comes to our survivability. I think the damage output is excellent already. I want a little bit more survivability. So trying to fit in things like Superintendent to get us more of these smokes, and especially the hydros, actually. We only get 2 hydros base, which is enough. It's nice, but considering how many smokes we have, and that we are often going to be a target for enemy torpedo boats when we're set up in a smoke screen, we want some of those hydros to help us out. The radar buff allows us to have 3 radars base. That feels relatively comfortable. Notice in this one I didn't even use all of them. Managed to use all of my smokes in this one, though. In fact, we would have been down to none left had that Fletcher not helped us out a little bit earlier. So Superintendent can help us out quite a bit as well. But with Survivability Expert, here we see that the Belfast can get up to 44,000 HP. Pretty solid amount of HP, so no heal, but a lot of HP for a tier 8. Yes, you will get absolutely smashed by battleships if you misplay, but it's a very strong ship, man. I had a good time. I had a really, really good time playing Belfast 43, and that kind of surprised me, but perhaps not once we looked at these buffs and how much they buffed this ship this update. And I guess I hadn't really mentioned it yet, but premium ship here being an 11,300 doubloon ship, it's not cheap to get this thing. It's very strong, and I think it's going to be absolutely incredible in ranked, for example. I think this will be really, really powerful there. The damage output, I mean, into DDs, the alpha damage is crazy. Combine that with HE plus smoke plus radar. These are all things that we don't often see together, at least on these British ships. You don't have the HE usually, where you can have smoke or radar. But this combines everything into one ship. No heal, though, is obviously the downside, as well as that poor shell flight time. But it's a very powerful ship. It is a very, very powerful ship. Armor-wise, it's not great, as we can see here. Fortunately, this is not your Citadel. It's only down here, but still, it is a very above water and the full length of your ship you got to be worried about. So you will take a lot of damage. If you're not feeling as confident in these lightly armored cruisers, I think this one could be challenging, but rewarding as well. I do think this one rewards you for good play, good positioning, and helping your teammates out with those radars, especially. Here's one of the builds that I ended up with towards the end. This one, though, was very focused on our utility and team play here. So notice no heavy HE, no IFHE. Instead, opting for more HP, more radars, more smokes. Adrenaline Rush is just too good to give up, so of course we're taking that. That gives us an 8.9 kilometer detect with a 9 kilometer radar. Slightly stealth radar, which means you can, when you're spotted, just radar. Very, very easy to catch enemy destroyers off guard. I hope Wargaming changes that, to be honest with you. I don't like the idea of stealth radars all that much in this game, so maybe they change that. But hey, they're adding stealth hydro on the next super destroyer, the Super Z52, whatever that one is called. So maybe they're a fan of it. I personally don't like it all that much. A lot of consumables things here to buff this ship up. And as for the more damage-focused build, something like this is what I was going for. And I like this one much more in randoms. That other one is probably more team play focused, more focused on ranked, for example. It could be better for. This one more damage focused. Heavy HE and SAP, taking things like top grade for even better reload. Concealment still, 10.2 detect because of heavy HE and SAP, nerfing our concealment down. Taking Survivability Expert over Superintendent, I think the extra HP here is more useful than one extra smoke and hydro and radar. If there was healing, maybe that would be a different story, but I value that extra HP. We still have a lot of consumables to use to help us stay alive and have a lot of team play elements. Still 3 radars base is very, very good. IFA is an insanely valuable skill. For 1 point, this is insanely valuable. Just easily giving you a heads up. Anytime you're getting cross-mapped, someone shooting at you, it takes a lot of the situational awareness skill out of the game. I think this is a way more powerful skill than priority target, even personally. That might be a hot take. I don't know, but I find this skill just absurdly strong, and it's only 1 point. So, of course, we're going to take it. Last stand to help us stay alive in those situations where we're caught without our smoke, and we have to take some incoming damage and hopefully keep our engine and rudder alive. Smokes are awesome here. They're a little bit weird to use if you're not used to the short burst smokes, but if you're playing the British destroyer line at all, you'll know how awesome these things are. And I love having them here. I really, really like them. 9 kilometer radar, very nice, and a decent 5 kilometer hydro as well. Here's the upgrades that I went with too. The radar doesn't last too long, so using surveillance radar mod here. And then if you took the upgrade here, I think it gets up to like 33 seconds or so. So a decent duration there. 9 kilometers is not particularly long range, so having around that 30 seconds is more than enough. I find either the enemy ship is dead by the time that radar runs out, or they've left your radar range. which is the more likely situation, especially early game. But that's going to do it for the Belfast 43 and its buffs here in 14.0. Let me know what you think in the comments down below. I hope you guys enjoyed. Thank you very much for watching, and have a great rest of your day.